Good evening, welcome to Ben TV. Today is Tuesday the 24th of May. And what you see here are people assembling for a historic occasion. Today the Victorian Government is offering an apology to Victorians convicted as criminals of engaging in homosexual activities. In the state of Victoria until 1981, gay men were arrested, convicted and even imprisoned for offences ranging from buggery to loitering for homosexual purposes. Often sexual abuse victims were charged with criminal offences. In 2014, the Victorian Government recognised the injustice dealt to hundreds of men who had job and travel restrictions placed on them because of their so-called criminal record, and legislated to raise the criminal records of men who were convicted in the past. Today is a formal apology for the injustice meted out to the gay community. It is indeed an historic occasion.
Well, I'm here today because in 2011 on Carnival Day I lobbied the then member for Part1, Clem Brown, to look at a method to remove historical gay sex crimes for men who were charged pre-1980. And Clem then worked through the Liberal Party and the government to produce a bill in 2014 that then expunged and extinguished historical gay sex crimes.
Clem, can you tell us why it's important to expunge the records of gay men who were convicted for homosexual crimes?
Yeah, sure. Look, this is an issue which has been around for a long time, since decriminalisation back in 1980. And Peter came to me at midsummer with Noel Toby's book and said, you should read this, which I did and was incredibly moved by it. And thought that this is wrong for these men to have the convictions that they've had hanging over them for so long. So at first I thought, well, this is a great symbolic opportunity for the government to show that it should never have been a crime. But in the course of working through it with Peter and with Corey Earlham, Anna Brown and others, it became apparent it wasn't just a symbolic gesture, it was actually something that impacted on people on a day-to-day basis in terms of their employment, volunteering, travel. So it then became a matter of urgency for me as the member for Part1 to try to get this through before the end of the last Parliament. And I'm pleased to say that we did it just before I lost my seat, the last day of Parliament.
Well done. Tell us why an apology is now important. We've got the legislation through, so why is the symbolic apology actually happening?
Well, I think it's a recognition that what's gone on in the past was wrong, and also that we as a community are sorry for it. In this place here, 150 years ago, we enacted legislation which was wrong. We made a big mistake, and we copied the British Parliament in enacting buggery laws, and it took well over 100 years for them to be extinguished, and then after that another 30 years for those convictions to be expunged. So I think today is about the final chapter, putting a line under it, and making a statement for the community, which obviously has flow-on effects for mental health issues as well.
Did you have a hard time getting it through the legislation system?
Well, no. I mean, from the will to do it was there from everybody in the Liberal coalition, and when it came before Parliament, it was a unanimous vote amongst all parties. The real issue, I think, was just having somebody to take it up as a cause and to navigate through the political process. So I found that speaking with all my colleagues, even the most conservative, they all thought it was a very good idea. And once I had that tacit approval, it was then just a matter of working through the process. And it's great today that Labor's instigated this apology because it highlights the bipartisan nature of it.
An apology to me is important because an apology is government's about having great relationships with people. And here's a group of people that were excluded from the process, and an apology is saying sorry, so that means their relationship can be restored. The second importance about the apology is that it helps promote that people who may have a criminal record because of an historical gay sex conviction can actually know that they can get that removed.
I'm here because I'm one of the first men in Victoria to have had my criminal records expunged under this new legislation. I believe there's 3 of us involved. And my conviction took place 54 years ago, and I've lived with that for all that time. And every now and again, 3 times, importantly in my life, this criminal record caused me to lie. For example, When I applied to go to the USA as a tourist, the visa application asked, did you have a criminal record? I lied and said no. It wasn't picked up. I was convicted when I was 18 years of age, at which time I was an accounting student, and I studied part-time for 15 years to qualify as a chartered accountant. On finishing my examinations, I had to apply formally to the Institute of Chartered Accountants in Australia for membership. And on that application form, there's a question: do you have a criminal record? If I'd answered honestly to that, I would not have been admitted. This is typical of what I've had to live with for 54 years. Now that my record has been expunged, I can honestly say I don't have a criminal record.
Can you go into any detail about why you were charged in the first place?
Why I was charged? I was charged because of very unjust laws in Victoria. What do you mean, the circumstances?
Yeah.
Right, I was having sex with another male in a car in Richmond Boulevard beside the Yarra one night when there were perhaps 20 vehicles parked there. At least one of them was gay. It was our vehicle, but there were probably 19 vehicles with heterosexual couples perhaps having sex, or at least being away from the public. And a policeman shone a torch into our car and arrested us, took us to Richmond Police Station. We spent the night there. We were interrogated. They got 2 confessions out of me, not just for that night, but for an incident 2 weeks before that. And that was the beginning of the process. And that's where so I was an 18-year-old. Welcome to Victorian justice.
That would have been a truly horrifying experience. So it must have had an impact on your family and everything else at the time.
My family were very supportive. I came from a country farming background, and I must say my father was magic in in assisting me. We didn't talk about it particularly, but he never judged me on that. What it did do, though, was it scared me off homosexual sex for, I think, 15 years, 14 years or something. I subsequently got married and divorced, not over my sexuality. In fact, recently I've met my ex-wife and she doesn't believe I'm gay, for what it's worth. But the terrifying experience of being in jail overnight, having to front the court 18 months later, it's terrifying.
Absolutely. Do you ever think a day like this would come when the whole ugly period was not only expunged, but now you're being apologised to?
Unbelievable. The big issue, of course, was 35 years ago when the law was changed and decriminalised. That was a massive step. And that meant gay men, boys could live a freer, open life, but it didn't actually change my legal status. I've had that record was still there.
As an 18-year-old, would you have imagined a day today when not only homosexuality has been decriminalised, it's somewhat celebrated, but now we're now talking about marriage equality and marriage and equal rights across the board?
No, I couldn't have imagined it. It's very hard to think of everything I thought of when I was 54 years ago. But I suppose most of it I associate it was terror, right, for me. In other words, if I was caught doing anything. So I suppose I clearly sublimated it all, but the idea of imagining decriminalising, I mean, I was aware I was different. And today, I'm sure every young boy and girl who are gay or transgender are aware of the difference. And yes, we've made huge steps, but we shouldn't get too carried away with this. This morning I'm having coffee with a friend, and a friend of his, a business associate, arrived, and I was introduced to this man, and he came past this morning and saw the flag on Parliament House. And we sort of started saying this tirade of, and what they want to do for poofters today, the whole thing. And my friend's actually sitting there totally embarrassed. I couldn't be bothered joining in the conversation. But we mustn't forget, homophobia is still out there, right? And so's people who cannot respect or appreciate the difference of other people. So, I mean, this man is probably 60, 65, but, it's not easy today even. It's better, but it's an ongoing fight. And I think this government and Andrews is to be commended for enabling this to happen.